Good morning, Barb.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having this conversation.
I'm so excited. I've known you for, gosh, it feels like a few years now. I've been watching you. I'm always so inspired by you. We are part of a really unique mental health community, and I
Mhm.
got to know you through that community, Mental Health Unite. Give them a
Yes.
plug because they're amazing with the work they're doing and bringing
Yeah.
people together for this
Mhm.
common thing that we all care so deeply about. Um,
Yeah.
so also today, I want to just mention and acknowledge is September 11th.
Yes.
And that's a day that has marked us all. And we all suffered a lot of loss. People suffered a
Mhm.
lot of loss. And I just want to acknowledge that. It's definitely a day that I will never forget. I'm sure you as well.
Absolutely.
But also, I wanted to have you on today because September Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and I really wanted to spark more open dialogue around mental health, specifically in the space of suicide, because
Hmm.
it takes those bold and authentic conversations. I think that, like you said before we came on the air, that could actually save a life. But
Yes.
before we begin, I want folks to know how amazing you are. So, could you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you work, what you do.
Well, I don't know about the amazing part,
You
Michelle.
are.
But first of all, I think you're so right about these conversations. I love that your title is Conversations That Matter. You know, um, we do matter. We do. And September is Suicide Prevention Month, and that is something that we are absolutely passionate about. Um, so I live in Wisconsin. If you don't know where it is, we're like right below Canada. It's cold. It's definitely starting to turn like autumn here. And I did found the Center for Suicide Awareness, which is a 501 nonprofit. And it's interesting because I think people sort of automatically assume like, oh, you must have had somebody die by suicide, and that's not true. Um, what inspired me is prior to this, I worked for the Department of Justice. I ran the victim crisis response team for a local police department here in our area. And Michelle, you live in a place that's snowy and icy, right? And I would go with law enforcement and I could knock on somebody's door um, after a loved one had died, like on the icy roads of Wisconsin. And they would grieve and they'd be shocked, but I could answer a question. Why? Well, it was the icy roads of Wisconsin. Okay. But then I would go to someone's door, knock on their door, give that awful death notification, and say, I'm so sorry your loved one died. How did they die? By suicide. Turning their world upside down and leaving and shutting the door. And I couldn't answer that one question. Why? And that why question just permeates somebody.
Mhm.
What could I have done? What
Mhm.
should I have done? I didn't answer the phone. Why wasn't I there? Why?
Right.
And there's a blank. There's a blank. You can't answer. We can speculate, right?
Mhm.
We can speculate and we're real good at like, pointing fingers. Oh, it was because of this person or it was because of that. But ultimately, I couldn't answer the why question. And that bugged me. That bugged me because I saw the stigma. I saw people giving casseroles. I don't know if do you have casseroles in the
Of course.
Northeast? Okay.
Absolutely.
I was talking to somebody and they're like, what the heck is a casserole? I'm like, you throw everything in that you have in your cupboard and then it's a casserole. You put potato chips on it, you know? And it's like they were bringing casseroles over for that person that died from that icy roads in Wisconsin, but they weren't bringing casseroles over to the person that died by suicide.
Right.
It was like, hush, hush, hush. It was, you know how they died, don't you? And it
Yeah.
was this judgment, right? What did they do wrong? And then put in the spiritual portion of it. Is this person going to heaven? Are they going to hell?
Right.
And it created this huge stigma of how the heck are you supposed to grieve? They're still gone.
Yeah.
There's still a loved one that is gone, but yet casseroles weren't going to them.
Yeah.
Casseroles were going to a different death. And so I was like, this isn't right. This isn't right. Why is stigma so much a part of suicide?
Right.
Do we have suicide? Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're going to talk later about how high the numbers are. And I thought part of the stigma is we don't have these kind of conversations. We simply don't have these conversations.
Right.
Why not? Let's get uncomfortable because once we actually figure it out. Hey, we got a problem.
Right.
Now we can work on finding solutions.
Right.
So, um, in my naivety, I said, I'll start a 501c3. We'll have a walk. We'll bring awareness, and we'll start bringing this to light. And that was 10 years ago, and we've
Wow.
never looked back. Um, and so it's an honor
Mhm.
to work with people that have struggled with their mental health. It's an honor to feel like you're sitting in conversation with somebody that feels like they're absolutely alone.
Right. That's
That's how
amazing.
it started.
That's amazing. Great job. Good on you. I want to share the statistic
Yeah.
that the CDC provided, because I think
Mhm.
when we talk about suicide, we have to go back to mental health, and we have to go
Yeah.
back to the reality that mental health, untreated, ultimately can lead to suicide. So when you look at the CDC, it
Absolutely.
says, during late June, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or suicide use,
Mhm.
where anxiety and depression symptoms were as high as 31%. Trauma, sensory related disorder symptoms, 26%. I mean, you can look at this, and it's sort of scary. This is June, and this is as a result of months of COVID, right? So
Right.
I think we have to do a better job of, I guess, backing into the reality that people need support
Yes.
before they've reached this point. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I think what people always ask me is, how do I make a difference? How do I don't want to get in people's stuff if they're dealing with something.
Sure.
What, what advice? I want to hear from an expert. Like, what advice would you tell someone who wants to do more?
For one, I love what you just said. I don't want to get into somebody's stuff, right? We have all heard that what happens in their yards should stay in their yard, right?
Right.
And that's why we're in the crisis we're in.
Yeah.
That's exactly why we're in the crisis we're in.
Right.
I can tell you, I don't know how many times I have sat with somebody that said, well, they talked about suicide. They talked about suicide and you didn't do anything. Well, I know that they were going through a horrific divorce and you didn't offer support.
Yeah.
So when people say to me, hey, Barb, you have initials after your name and I
Mhm.
always feel uncomfortable with expert. I don't know if we're experts on anything, you know what I mean? We're all just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Um, but we can be experts because you know what? We can go back to what we are. We have a commonality amongst everybody. We're human beings.
Yeah.
We're human beings.
Yep.
We have all, when people say, oh, we all put our pants on the same way. Okay, yeah, we do. So guess what? We have something in common. We
Yes.
have become so much about let's point fingers at how different we are instead of guess what? We all are human. Every
Yes.
one of us has had a struggle, right?
Right.
Every one of us has had a day that you're like, man, can we just like this day be over?
Right.
We've all had those, but guess what? We don't share them, do we,
We
Michelle?
don't share them. We don't share them. Yeah.
We hide them.
Yes, and we amplify the good. So you have no idea when someone is struggling. And I always tell people, just create the space. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're saying. Just create the space and allow people to be them, and to be present for them.
Mhm.
Judgment free.
Yes, yes. Aren't we quick to judge like we know better,
Yeah.
right? Oh, we know their story. Really? Do you know like their background? Do you know? I
Yeah.
always say, we're so quick to label people, aren't we?
Right.
Even like with diagnosis of mental health, right? Oh, OCD, anxiety disorder, depression, right? What if we had labels that said, I went through an abusive relationship. I had trauma. I went through a sexual assault. Wouldn't we be a little more kinder to
Right.
each other
Right.
if we knew each other's journeys? Or at least I'm hope-filled that
Yeah.
we would be kinder to each other.
Right.
But we don't have that. We don't have that, like what you just said, that space, the sacred space of just being,
Right.
not having to fix it, not having to give advice, not saying I know better, not ambushing the conversation, but just that safe space to say, I'm here.
Right.
I'm here.
Yeah, and you don't have to, you don't have to be a clinician. I always say
Wow.
you don't have to be a clinician. What you have to be is the person that has courage not to look away in an uncomfortable situation.
Yep. Because let's face it, Michelle, why are we turning away? It's not that they're uncomfortable, right? It's
Right.
we're
You're
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
We're uncomfortable. People will say, well, how do I ask somebody if they're suicidal? Just like that, you know,
Yeah.
hey, I know you're struggling. I know you're going through a hard time, and you're concerning me. Are you thinking of harming yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself?
Mhm.
What they're uncomfortable with is, what if that person says yes?
Right.
Then what?
Right.
So we have to be comfortable with us knowing that somebody might say to you, yeah, I am really struggling. I am. And what should I do?
So walk us through that, Barb. Walk us through that. So say you do create that space, that
Mhm,
loving connection, and you say, "Are you suicidal?"
mhm.
What do you say? What do you say to someone in that situation?
For one, that means you're a safe person. So kudos to you,
Mhm.
because people that disclose that to you feel a connection, feel that you are safe enough to handle this.
Mhm.
So don't freak out. Don't avoid it. Like you said, don't turn away and say, "Oh, you sure about that? That sort of sounds like a crazy idea."
Right.
One of the things I really want to dive into is a suicidal person. It's not necessarily that they want to die. Okay, they just want all this garbage and this pain that they're holding in to go away.
Right.
And they have just become so down and hopeless that that's where suicide comes into their mind.
Mm.
Like, that would really solve all my problems.
Right.
Like, that would solve my financial problems. That would solve my relationship problems. That's the unclear thinking. So, us, when people say, how can I make a difference? We can be that little beacon of hope to say, that's not going to solve those problems.
Right.
We can sit here in this uncomfortableness, like you talk, and figure it out together. The we factor. So,
Yeah.
walking it through, if somebody comes up to you and says, things like, it's not going to matter next week anyway. Why isn't it going to matter next week?
Mhm.
Why wouldn't you be here next week?
Right.
Or I can't take it anymore. Okay. Why can't what can't you take? Let
Mhm.
me help lighten that load.
Mhm.
I'm using phrases that we have a tendency to put under the radar.
Mhm.
You know, one more thing happens to me and I'm checking out.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What is it? What are they saying to us? Their backpack in life is getting heavy
Right.
and they're reaching out, and maybe not directly, right? Because, let's face it, it would be great if somebody like that was suicidal walked up to us and said, I'm suicidal. Can you help me? But we have to have the keenness to read people's language,
Mhm.
body language, tone of voice, changes in their behavior. The
Mhm.
person that's always extrovert, right?
Right.
Especially with COVID right now. Okay, I'm an
Right.
extrovert and I'm like, okay, I've talked to my dogs, I've talked to
Enough.
my plants.
Yeah.
What's going on with people?
Right.
So it is our business to get into people's business.
Right.
So when they do come up to you and say things like that, take one step more into the conversation, lean into it. What's going on that you say, excuse me, that you're not going to be here next week? What's going on? Or what is next week? Um, lean into it. Lean
Yeah.
into it. Ask just one more question, one more thing. Maybe it's you simply saying, could we just maybe take 5 minutes and talk more about this? Come at it with compassion,
Right.
empathy, and love.
Mm,
Don't come at it with fear and judgment.
right. Right.
That's going to close somebody down, right?
Yep.
But if you come in it not with like, well, I know everything,
Right.
or I'm going to fix it, right? Because we have that urge like, problem, fix it.
Yeah.
But literally just come in with love and compassion and say, I maybe not know what you're walking through, but I
Right.
certainly can walk with you on this.
Right. I think we live in a society where you don't want to touch it and be responsible for it. You don't want to
Oh,
be
yeah.
that person that makes a mistake in trying to help. Can we really make a mistake just by being there, though?
No,
Exactly.
you can't. I
Right.
love that you said that. We're so, what if I say this? What if I don't say this?
Right.
Well, you know what? It's not really how you say it, it's that you is said it.
Yeah.
The shoulda, coulda, wouldas come from someone not saying, they did tell me they were going through a tough time. Okay. You can't take that back.
Right.
We have affirmation cards left and right, right?
Yeah.
Tell the person that you love them.
Yep.
Why? Because we don't know in an instant if that person's still there.
Right.
So I think when we talk about that uncomfortableness,
Hmm.
how uncomfortable is it to sit with, why didn't I ask them?
Right.
That's
Right.
a, that's a bigger burden
It's
than
so true.
getting into someone's business.
Yeah.
Someone asked me this question one time. They're like, yeah, but Barb, what if they get mad at me? So they get mad at me.
They get mad. Right.
Guess what? They're going to know you're a darn good friend,
Right.
that you care enough that you noticed, hey, you're going through a tough time, you know, you're changing in mood. Um, people always ask me, like, are there warning signs of a suicidal person?
Right. What are there?
Sure. Um, One thing that I think really goes under the radar is perfectionism.
Oh.
People don't realize perfectionists, right? You are literally a loser or winner.
Oh yeah.
And we've all had those kind of people, right? That say to me, if I don't get an A all the way across the board, I'm nothing. And I'm sitting here going, isn't a C average?
Yeah.
And what's wrong with average? Is there anything really wrong with average?
Right.
I like average.
Right. Yeah. It's true.
And so really watch for those people that put undue stress on themselves to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect.
Right.
I'm not perfect, you
Right.
know? And
Right.
I love how you were talking about like we give this persona, right?
Yeah.
Of, look at people's Facebooks. Do they
Totally.
do they put like the day that they have a cold and they just woke up from NyQuil?
I know.
No,
I know.
no one does.
Yeah.
I would love for us to post authentic pictures,
I know.
because then we'd be like, hey man, she doesn't look that good in the morning at 6 a.m. I mean, if people talk to me before my coffee and no,
Yeah.
I'm not looking like this.
I know. Listen, I got to tell you, I can't do the pictures yet. I'm a little too vain for that, but I will be very vocal about days that are not good for me because I want
Yeah.
people to be a little uncomfortable, but but real. Like I think if I go first and try to be a little more authentic, that like I'm struggling, blah blah blah, then people, first of all, I don't want them to think that I need their pity party and I need their I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it to be real, to just be like, listen, we all see things on social media that make things look amazing. So here's a reality. I'm struggling. I am struggling behind the scenes over here. So I just need you to know that. And if you're struggling, just reach out to people. Like that was my last post and people were like, oh, and I was like, but we need more authenticity. We need more genuine people being human beings because it gives us permission to just be like, oh man, I can have a bad day. It's not the end of the world.
Right.
Um, could you switching gears, could you tell us about your center, Barb? I want to know more about your center. I want to know about the lives you've saved. I want to know sort of like what you've been seeing during COVID.
Sure, sure. So the center, one of the things I think I'm most proud about is our team really does walk in that authenticness that you were talking about.
Awesome.
We are not put on this earth to judge people.
Right.
And we have to step out of that because that's really our ego saying we know better. And so, one of the things that we really talk about is we can talk and sit with somebody in their pain. And that truly is suicide prevention, right? To say, I don't like, quick, hurry up. Like, you got 5 minutes. Yeah, you're having a bad day. So what? I've had a bad day. But sitting with somebody that we're not trying to fix, because, right? Because if we're fixing them, what are we telling somebody? That they're broken.
Right.
We're all works in progress. Let's face that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I think if we have that true statement of like, we're all works in process. I mean, the Barb 5 years ago is not the Barb that's sitting here today,
Yep.
and I hope the Barb 5 years from now is different than the Barb that's sitting here today.
Right.
So let's get away from like you're broken and there's something wrong with you, but like, hey, what's going on and what is your journey been?
Right.
So the center has really worked hard on being where people are at,
Mm.
reaching people where we're at, right? I think we have this sort of reverse type of thinking that people that are in pain should come to us, right?
Right.
We sort of say, how do we reach out to them?
Mm.
Where are they most comfortable? So I'll give you some examples of some of the initiatives. For one, we've started over 7 walks across Wisconsin. Just that awareness piece, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Saying, "Hey, why are you walking?" My hope is that we have the comfortableness of even remember 10 years ago we didn't really have the talk about breast cancer, right?
Mhm.
People didn't even say the word.
Right.
I want that same comfortableness where people are wearing purple and teal on
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
Those are the colors of suicide prevention.
Yes.
And so we've started walks, we've done awareness. In 2014, we had a meat raffle. If you guys don't know what meat raffles are, they're awesome.
In
You go
Wisconsin,
to,
I'm sure.
yes, you go to a tavern and you raffle off like, a side of beef and a ham and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But we
That's what you
raised enough. Yeah, okay. So
do.
those other states that don't know meat raffles, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you're missing. They're fun. But we raised just a handful of money and we made a documentary.
Oh,
And
wow.
the documentary is called If You Only Knew What You Left Behind. And it's free. It's on YouTube and it's on our center thing. And what it was what happens after a suicide.
Mm.
And we talked with so many incredible families that shared their heart and their story
Oh, wow.
of what happened after their loved one died by suicide. And it was an incredible experience to hear, of families got divided. People don't realize the divorce rate for somebody that like a child died by suicide is horrific.
Yeah.
What did their life look like after suicide? And then we also talked to people that attempted suicide.
Mm.
And how do we, as a community, how do we wrap them in support
Yeah.
without judgment? And we talked to other people that just walking through that journey of mental health. Um, and it's real people. These are
Right.
real stories. Okay. This isn't like a makeup artist and we're sitting in a studio. We're sitting in Kaukauna, Wisconsin, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it won the best documentary for a social cause in the United States.
Awesome. Great job.
And so it's 30 minutes. And we realized, like, okay, you know what? If it can happen in little tiny rural Wisconsin,
Right.
then it's bigger than we think.
Right.
And so, again, reaching to people where they're at, that they can watch that and say, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. I'm not the only one that's thought about suicide. Um, some of the other initiatives we did is Wisconsin is an extremely beer brewing brandy type of state. Well, we have a tendency to go to bars, don't we? When we're down.
Yeah.
Don't we always have that phrase of have a beer, it will be better?
Yeah.
But alcohol is also depressant as well.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
And so it's okay, you have the beer, maybe you sort of forget about it, but then you're going into the depressive mood.
Yeah.
So we worked with our Tavern League and we created beer glasses with our Hopeline number on it. And I'll talk about the Hopeline in a minute.
Mm,
Again, reaching people where they're at.
right.
And so they don't have to come to us, but they know that people do care.
Right.
The Hopeline
Yeah.
in I think 2014, 2015, maybe it was, sitting down with some law enforcement people and looking at what happened prior to a suicide, especially of a youth.
Mm,
And if people don't know, suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst our kiddos.
yeah.
That's our future. We
Yeah.
need them.
We got to reach them.
And it's the second leading cause of death. And we were looking at all the documents of their texts. They were texting, right? So it
Mhm.
was the 15-year-old boy texting another 15-year-old boy going, I can't believe she broke up with me. We liked each other. We've all had those hurtful relationships,
Yeah.
right? I don't care at 15 or at 50. We've all had those hurtful relationships. But the thing was he was talking to who? A 15-year-old also boy
I know.
that was like, yeah, I know it hurts, but so and so likes you, and next week you'll forget her.
Yeah.
Not doing it because he was dismissing it, because
Right.
they didn't have the skill set.
No.
And so we looked at it and we were going, oh my gosh, these people were like texting not like 10 minutes, but like 3 hours.
Right.
And I'm going, that's called a window of opportunity for us. That's
Right.
like prevention right there.
Right. Right.
And so started cold calling people and found out like, hey, in California, you've had a text line for how many years? Awesome. Um, can you share? How did you do it? What did you
Right.
do?
Right.
Um, and so we did it. I, it was like, okay, don't really, I can tell you,
Uh-huh.
fear can either paralyze you or propel you.
Yeah.
At that moment, I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
I had no real solid like Excel spreadsheet that like knew it was going to be forecasted for 5 years, blah, 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 blah,
Right.
which I think we always think we have to have.
Exactly. Hmm.
But I had faith that someone was going to text that line and we were going to save their life. And that's all. That was my vision.
Wow.
Give me one person
Yep.
that texts that line and they decided they had a purpose and they needed to be here. That was my goal.
Mm-hmm.
To date, 171 people started their suicide attempt, and we saved all of them.
Mm.
Um, Thousands of people have texted the Hopeline. For one, it's a free service.
Okay.
You can text the word Hopeline to 741-741, and it's free. It's text. It's anonymous. But here's the difference. You're not talking to that 15-year-old boy. You're
Right.
talking to trained crisis counselors,
Right.
people that are trained to understand the verbiage of suicide.
Right.
They're there as emotional support. So
Hmm.
I think the biggest thing is this isn't a suicide hotline. This is a caring, compassion. I care about what you're going through.
Right.
That is suicide prevention.
It is.
When you
Absolutely.
said this prior of let's get way before we're into crisis,
Right.
absolutely.
Right.
And that's where every one of us can do that.
Right.
Every one of us can say, I'm sorry you're having a tough time. Or like you shared your story, like, yeah, I'm struggling right now. If we all were just a little bit more vulnerable
Yeah.
and really saying, yeah,
Hmm.
I've gone through a tough time, or yeah, I've gone through, a bad breakup, we wouldn't feel so alone and isolated.
You're so right. And before we got on the air, we were talking about this anticipated mental health crisis that
Mhm.
will happen in the face of COVID. Like you said it so eloquently before about the vaccine. Do you want to share that? Because I think it's great.
We're talking about a vaccine, right? That's our hope. We have to
Yeah.
have a vaccine for COVID. Long after that, we don't have a vaccine for mental health, do we?
Right. Exactly. And I think people need to get that. And that's why. And so what also scares me, obviously, is the the need. So I think the silver lining, let me step it back. I think the silver lining of COVID is people are getting more aware of how they're doing like mentally beyond,
Mhm.
and any other time in history, I don't think people are dealing with mental imbalances as we are now, being quarantined, having things taken from us. So I think that the silver lining is the awareness piece. I'm hopeful that people are more present to how they're doing emotionally and mentally. But I also anticipate, and people are saying this, and I keep seeing this in articles, is that there's going to be a crisis where there's not going to be enough clinicians. There's not going to be enough support for the amount of people that need help. So maybe talk to us a little bit about COVID, what you've been seeing, and how important. So I think it's so important that we just have a trusted confidant. That's the first step that we
Yes.
can talk to, right? Like you don't have to go to right out the gate, hit a clinician up and talk to a clinician. You can actually help yourself just by talking, correct?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
You know, I have the initials after my name, but that doesn't mean that it has to be. When people say to me, well, yeah, but Barb, you're an expert in it, or you've studied it and stuff like that. Well, none of us had to take a class that we have to have compassion, right?
No.
We can do that.
Yeah.
That's free. That's a freebie, you know? Um, and so when we talk about the silver lining, you're right, Michelle. I think someone asked me this the other day. I said, my hope is when we do finally say, okay, we got a vaccine and we're through this pandemic, that we really take a look at the mental health as a whole.
Right.
When you were talking about we don't have enough clinicians now.
I know.
We don't.
Yep.
We simply don't have enough therapists, clinicians, um, mental health facilities.
Yeah.
Why have we have such disparity on physical health? Because we're
Yeah.
doing. I mean, it's hard pressed not to find some YouTube thing on how to lose weight and how to eat healthy and da 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 da. Right?
Yep. Yep.
Shouldn't we have that same playing field of how do we talk to ourselves positive? How do we believe that we are worthy?
Right.
I'll hear the cliche of you can't love somebody unless you love yourself. Well, where the heck was that class in college? I didn't take that, right?
So true.
It's like those are great, sayings, but how do we do them? How do
Yeah.
we do them? How do we love ourselves? How do we stop comparing ourselves to other people's measuring sticks?
Yeah. I
How do
have
we say I'm good?
I have a friend who, when I was not doing well, they actually told me to remove social media from my phone and only look at it on my computer in limited spurts. And I was amazed at what that did for my well-being, because of the constant comparison that we don't even think we're doing, but we're doing. So when it comes to loving yourself, I mean, it's so important to just recognize what you're doing and what you're engaging in and how it's making you feel.
Yes. Yes. I always say if it's not serving you, then get it off.
Yeah.
And you're right. Especially now with COVID, um, turn your news off.
Yeah, exactly.
We need to realize we have to minimize all the negativity.
Mhm.
We have so many different ways to get news, right?
Right.
And then there's the trust factor, which is fake news, which is false news.
Right.
What's real? What's true? What statistics are what? What's the numbers? What is that instilling in us? Fear.
Right. Exactly.
And when we work out of fear, we don't do our best. We work out of the fear being in the driver's seat instead of us saying, wait a minute, I don't have to listen to the news.
Yeah, you get to turn it off.
I
Yeah.
have now control.
Yeah.
And let's face it, we feel like we have to be more in control of things. We do have the control of your friend was absolutely right. Turn off that social media,
Yeah.
Okay, you can find out, the Green Bay Packers store, but after that,
Yeah.
turn it off.
Turn it off.
And in COVID especially, right? Because what has COVID done to us is the unknown.
Right.
if we remember when we started about how I couldn't answer that person's question of why,
Right.
this is the first time that we are all going, I don't know,
Right.
right? We're all shrugging our thoughts. Is it going to end in November 2021?
Right.
We all remember starting in March, right?
Yeah.
I was naive. I was like, okay, we're going to work from home. I'll be back by June.
Yeah, exactly.
We're in September
I know.
and we're all sort of going, okay, or is it 3 more months, 10 more months?
Yeah.
That unknown brings anxiety and
Yes.
it brings fear. And so when you asked me about what are we seeing on the Hopeline, that's
Yeah.
exactly what we're seeing.
Yeah.
The fear of unknown.
Okay.
Give us some answers. Also, too, is like we're heading into autumn,
Right.
and for anyone that lives in these cold states,
Yeah.
after autumn comes a thing that starts with W, winter,
I know.
and it's dark and it's cold.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we underestimate people that brings its own. If people haven't heard of SAD, the
Yeah.
seasonal affective disorder,
I
we
have.
need to have those. We need to talk about those.
Yeah.
It is real. It's not something that's made up.
Yeah.
And I think that is so crucial about conversations. Nothing frustrates me more when somebody goes to a professional and they minimize it.
Right.
Like it's in your head.
Right.
Um, you know, just, we all are depressed because it's winter. No, we're not.
Right.
um, and what do we do about that? And I think we have to look at it not in a one way. So like here at the center, we do a lot of holistic things.
Do you?
Yes, it's not one size fits all, right?
Right. I love that.
And so like I think I was showing to you like before, like rose quartz. It's
Yeah.
a crystal. It's
Yeah.
a crystal that is very powerful, that is self-love. You
Love.
know, I was telling you, I think the whole world should be having some rose quartz in their pocket, and maybe
Yeah.
we raise the vibration of our world to be like a little bit more loving.
More love. Yeah.
Um, I think we have to get away from the whole thing like this has to be the only way you can go,
Right.
right?
Right.
We are not all alike. You have blonde hair, I have brown hair. That's one difference. But
Right.
what works on you, maybe for your depression, wouldn't work on me for my depression or anxiety or OCD or fill in those blanks. Um, some people need medication. Okay, let's stop shaming people
Right.
about that. We
Right.
have to get rid of the shame. We talked about like, we even say it like, oh, shame on you. It's like, really?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
why? Because we're taking medication? Do we
Yeah.
say shame on you for
Mhm.
taking diabetes medicine?
Right.
Nope.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'm so glad you mentioned the colder months coming up because
Mhm.
I personally have always struggled with seasonal depression. I'm always like looking for my next trip to the Caribbean to sort of elevate my energy, just to pull me through the cold months because I struggle in the winter months. So I'm actually really nervous about this year because who knows if we're going to have, wave 2 of COVID and we're going to not be able to be 25% in the restaurants to get out. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And I guess, the thing that I've been really present to is what am I doing in my own space to prepare myself for the times when I have to be inside, the times when I'm
Yeah.
not going to be outside. Like, what's my inside space like? Like, what do you have in terms of recommendations for people to sort of get ready for those colder months? Do you have any thoughts around that?
Yes. And I'm glad you talked about that because COVID's going to be a big factor, right?
It
We
is.
just talked about the restaurant portion of it.
Yeah,
Um, like outside seating. Uh, Here in Wisconsin, we're not going to be doing outside seating.
I know, especially in Wisconsin.
You can make some ice blocks and that kind of thing, but we're not going to have the patio seating anymore.
Right.
Um, and so having the foresight to say, I'm going to create something maybe in my house. So for me, I have my little sanctuary of a really cool warm rug.
Mm.
I have I believe fuzzy blankets are the best thing in the world. If anybody remembers Snoopy and the Peanuts,
Yeah.
Linus had his little blanket. My God, wouldn't we be a better world if we all had our little own fuzzy blanket?
Yeah.
Even the Southerner people, you can have blankets. Um, and find things that you can connect that make you feel good
Yeah.
and connect to your own feelings.
Right.
We are so disconnected from our feelings, right?
Mhm.
Why do we say things like, well, I felt it in my gut, but I didn't do it? Well, why not?
Yeah.
If those
Listen.
blankets make you feel great, um, I love my salt lamps, and I have my salt lamps. Um, and you know what? Who cares if people tell you like, well, those things don't work or this? Who cares?
Yeah.
You
It's
don't have to
true.
sit in my little sanctuary. I
Yeah.
do, and I have to feel better. So I don't need your opinions.
Yeah.
Um,
I know here we're being told that there, in a lot of cases, the companies are not allowing employees to actually come physically back to the office until January, maybe even later. So
right.
the one thing that I like to share with my folks when I do my resilience webinar is I lift this piece from Jay Shetty. He's a former monk. He says the quickest way to rejuvenate and reinvigorate your work area is to change what you look at, what you hear, and what you smell.
Mhm.
And I did that. I actually found my diffuser. I put lemongrass oil in it. I ordered mixed tiles. They're the really cute little tiles you can order. I got my favorite pictures printed on those. And then I have my music playing, my soft music playing. So I did those three things and it literally reinvigorated my workspace. So I invite people to try that on. And I love your idea of the salt lamp. I have salt lamps everywhere. And I am a big fan of fluffy carpets. I have a
Yes.
beautiful white one too. So yeah, I love
Yes.
it.
And one size doesn't fit all. Like when we
Right.
talk about things, people are like, well, I do yoga. I don't like yoga. Don't ask me to do that. But you know what? It's so cool because you can do you.
Yeah.
And what's interesting? You just talked about like about what you see and what you smell and everything. And I love diffusers, essential oils.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like the smell of something? And
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be just an essential oil. Heck, brewing coffee in the morning. Woo-hoo,
Yes.
that's my
Coffee.
essential oil. You
Yes.
know, um, a homemade pie, a pot roast in a crock pot. You
Yeah.
know, it really enhance what you see and smell. We
Yeah.
are visual people. We are.
Yeah.
And we always talk about, you were going back to something about like what about somebody that's suicidal?
Hmm.
We know for a fact that if you invigorate all five of your senses, that you can actually get somebody out of suicidal thinking. So that brilliant, type of color
Uh-huh.
that you're bringing them all of their senses alive.
Oh wow.
That smell,
Yeah.
wow, this is what you're
Hmm.
doing is you're basically confusing your brain,
Uh-huh.
putting your hand in an ice bucket. You're
Uh-huh.
basically saying, hey, I can't make all these connections of my not clear thinking, but
Great.
also smell this incredible smell.
Yeah.
So those are some tips and tricks too when somebody is acutely suicidal.
Wow.
Um, and
Thank you.
that's something too that when we talk about what some of the things that the center does, that's some of the things that we do. We
Hmm.
want to be the resource. Sometimes people are fearful for asking a question,
Right.
and I want them to know you're safe to ask those questions here.
Yeah.
You're sometimes people will say, I think about suicide, but I never act on it. There are people that walk through their whole life that have suicidal thinking, but don't act on it. We've got to erase hey, this is what we know.
Right.
How many times has somebody said, well, suicidal people, they're always the ones that are the drug users and the home. No.
No. No.
Look at the people that have died by suicide.
Yeah.
They're everyday people. And for one, they're not statistics, they're people.
Yeah. I think about how COVID has rocked a lot of people's world around their finances, around their employment, around their relationships.
Yep.
And And it quite honestly scares me, Barb. Like, because if you don't have a job and you're struggling financially, you may not see the light. You know, I can only imagine how many calls you may have gotten around that alone. Like, I'm hopeless.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And when we get to help the Hopeline, it's really saying, what's stressing you out now?
Yeah.
Well, okay, how many people were furloughed,
Yeah.
right? How many people were like you just said, I don't know if you're ever going to come back.
Right.
How many parents are struggling to say, I have to work from home, but I also have to do second grade math?
Yeah. Exactly.
We have this newness, and I hate the word new normal. I'm sorry.
Me too.
Because it's like, first of all, what's normal,
Yeah.
right? And now
Yeah.
we have to have a new normal of it.
Yeah.
How about we just say we're really in flux and we have no clue what's going on right now?
We're
You
just
know,
rolling with the punches.
we're trying to do the best we can to
Yeah.
stay treading water. And
Yeah.
that's why we can help each other out. And that's why we can, check into the person that's an extrovert.
Yeah.
I have good friends that are introverts and they're like, "Oh, I'm loving this." But they know me as an extrovert. I'm going, okay, like, anybody want to talk to me? um, Doing those simple things. And I know they sound simple. That is the essence of suicide prevention. It
Right.
doesn't have to be that you're a therapist, clinician, and everything else. Yes, we need that. But you also have the ability to do a lot of prevention just by being kind, just by checking in on your neighbors. Why have we forgotten like who our neighbors even are?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yes.
we can be more connected. We can do better.
Right.
Can. And that's where each person can step up. So when they say, "Hey, I want to make a difference," that's the difference you can make
That's it. Yeah. Right there.
right there.
So, Barb, I could talk to you all day long, and I, I think you are a wealth of knowledge, and you've shared such really valuable tips and just helpful nuggets. So, thank you so much for that. And as we start to wrap up our conversation today, what do you want people to know? Is there anything that you haven't shared that you want people to know, just around mental health or suicide, or from your clinician, your clinical background? Is there anything you want to leave folks with?
Couple things.
Hmm.
You don't have to be an expert. You can just be human. We are in this crisis, and I'm talking about the mental health crisis,
Right.
because we haven't had these conversations. Let's all take a step back, and we can do this. We can. We're hearing these cliches of, we're resilient and everything. What does resilience mean? Resilience means that we work in unity. We have to stop the differences. We have this beautiful thing called the middle of the road. We don't have to be on opposite ends. We can actually find something in common.
Mm.
And that commonality and that unity is going to bring where we have better mental health, where we have these real conversations, because at the end of the day, we are looking for that authenticness. Being a safe person doesn't necessarily mean that you have initials after your name. It means that you're using your heart and you're saying, I care enough about you.
Mm.
Um, People always say, Barb, you still believe in like pixie dust and unicorns. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I do. Because you know what? I truly believe there is more good in this world than bad.
Yeah.
I do.
Mhm.
And maybe that's my, rose colored glasses, or that my rose quartz is working on me. But I do, because you talk to people, people do
Yeah.
say, I'm just as confused about you, or I'm just as isolated as you, or I have those bad days, but we don't share them.
Right.
So let's share them, and what a perfect time to say, let's step up, let's make a difference.
Right.
People want to do actions, right? We're an
Yeah.
action type and orientated. So let's charge each person every day to say, you know what? Go out of your comfort zone, ask somebody if they're okay. And and find something each day that you're grateful for.
Mm,
We are so good at tagging on to negativity, aren't we?
we
You know,
are. Yeah.
ugh, it's like, let's grab onto it. So even if it's you write down one gratitude a day,
Hmm.
post it. If you would see my house and you can see my office, I have affirmations everywhere.
Hmm.
Why? Because we need to continually remind ourselves we're doing the best we can. We're not perfect and we don't need to be.
Right.
And we're just trying and we're good enough and we're not broken. We are works in progress and we are continually growing. So find something that's good in every day and
Awesome.
write it down.
I love it. Oh my gosh. You're amazing. We are birds of a feather. I am
Yeah.
so grateful. I am so grateful because people say, Michelle, you believe the world is rainbows and sunshine. 95% of the time I try, but it definitely isn't always easy. So I think we have to kind of create our own piece. So I appreciate you, Barb, so much for
I
thank
agree.
you. Thank you so much for coming on to Michelle's Conversations That Matter and sharing what you did. And could you tell people how to reach you if they're interested in connecting?
Sure. So, like the Hopeline is, here, I'll even show you a little card. That's open 24/7. So, that's free service. So, like you can
Fine.
text it anytime.
What's the text again?
Hopeline is the word,
Okay,
and then 741-741. And
perfect.
so that's a free service. That's
Mhm.
I'm having a bad day. People don't get me. I'm struggling financial. COVID sucks.
Mhm.
Um, you know, my masks makes my glasses steam up. Any of that, whatever's
Mhm.
stressing you, that's what those people are there for. Otherwise, you can check out our web. Oh, hey, I forgot to talk about podcasts. We're doing one. We have a podcast channel, and so we would love for people to be guests on our podcast
Nice.
because the more people that talk like this,
Mhm.
the more we're going to break down that stigma. But our website is centerforsuicideawareness.org.
Nice.
And we also have a Discord and a Twitch channel because we do video gaming and mental health. We have a whole division on that. So lots of different ways. We have a Twitter page, a Facebook page. Um, and please don't ever feel like you can't reach out.
Mm.
There's nothing so big and nothing so small. And guess what? We can figure it out together.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Barb, for being
You're
here.
welcome.
I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and let's definitely stay in touch and keep this conversation going.
Absolutely. Thanks for having the conversation.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.